Thanks for the tour around the property, Amanda. It's really good. Lots of potential. And you said you've been living here for 10 years, is that right?
Yeah, just under 10 years.
Just under 10 years, okay. And when we spoke on the phone, you mentioned that you are moving to Melbourne.
Yeah, I'm moving to be married to my daughter.
Okay. And is that, is there a time frame that you have to be there?
Not really, but obviously while I'm still able to, I'd like to be able to get moved and buy something nearer to her.
Okay, okay. And you mentioned on the phone that you were hoping for something in the region of 400,000.
Yeah, well, I've been looking at the market.
Yeah.
And properties like mine are going around for 400 or more.
Sure. Okay. Well, I've done some research as well, and what I'll do, if you don't mind, I'll go through a summary of the research that I've done on pricing, and then go through some methods of selling the property that might appeal to your property, to this property, and then obviously answer any questions you've got along the way. And then if you're happy with everything, we might be able to discuss perhaps listing the property. Is that okay? So obviously prior to coming here, what I do is we do something called a comparative market analysis, where we compare properties on the market and properties sold. Now, in the I see you got the pre-listing kit that I sent out to you. In there is some properties that we have sold that are comparable. That are on the market that are comparable to your property. And I've got I've got some properties that have been sold in my listing in this information I have here. So I'll go through all that information with you, and then we'll try and work out by that method how yours sits in and fits in with those other properties. Does that make sense? Okay. So obviously there was a few houses in this street sold recently. And did you go through those properties, have a look? Or?
I went through a couple of them.
Yeah.
I think mine's slightly better in some ways. There was one that was a bit newer, more modern than mine, but the others were sort of, I didn't see all of them, but it's the couple that I did go through.
Yeah.
Did say, I'd say mine was similar.
Okay. Well, the four properties I've picked up that I think are similar are all within a 5 kilometre radius of here. So that's how we based it. Some, you might argue, have different pros and cons, but if you put it all in the mix, I got as close as I could from the 4 that I selected. But just going through the property, there's a few things that I know on the phone you mentioned that if I saw anything that you thought might enhance the property, to mention it. I've made some notes on the property. Obviously, when we approach the property, the street appeal is really important. So I've noted that obviously prune the shrubs around the house, the garden beds, just tidying them up, and any bald areas of grass might need some lawn, some turf laying, because obviously first impressions is really important. So that's why I would suggest that. Again, turfing the grassed areas, clearing the debris. I know that obviously there's just some bits that you obviously haven't got around to in the back deck that where the air conditioning unit is. There was a few boxes and stuff like that. Obviously, obviously when you're ready to get the house on the market, I'm sure you'd have that in hand. The floor in that. Now, you did mention that you were prepared to spend some money on preparing the house to market. And my main things would be new carpets in all of the bedrooms, repaint throughout, and attend to any of the grouting in the bathrooms, because it is obviously over time the grouting needs touching up.
And if I put that money in to get those things done, will I get that back?
Look, there is never any guarantees, but what I have done is I've shown the properties I've picked are with work that would be similar to the work you would have got done. So the pricing I'm suggesting is from what if you do these jobs. I think that's the range you'll be in, because that puts you comparable with properties that have done similar things. Like for instance, you've got 77 Hamlin Street. That was a very similar house, but slightly more modern finishes. It did have original kitchen and bathroom, but it was freshly painted. All the floorings were brand new, and the kitchen and the bathrooms were really tidy. You couldn't pick up anything on that, and that actually went for 415,000. So they got a really good price, and that sold in three and a half weeks. 13 Killarney Crescent. That's a house very similar era. I would imagine it would have been built around the same time, as I said. The yard was a bit smaller, but had a lot of potential, and that was sold for 395. That was on the market for 5 weeks. 18 Pollyanna Court. I said again, another tidy 3-bedroom low set property. It was more modern. Presented very nicely, but it had a smaller yard, so it probably would have limited itself to the buyer groups, and that sold for 377. 7 Killar Court. That was another. This home was a bit bigger, split level home. It was in excellent condition, and it was on a larger block, and that went for 378. That one probably, because of the layout of that one, probably held that back a wee bit in comparison to yours. But they all had the jobs like the flooring painted, look very presentable and ready for market. So they all sold sort of between that 370 to 415. Now, when you compare sort of like for like. I think your price range is going to be between 377 and 393. I know.
So you don't think it's going to be over 400 even if I do all that work?
I think if you do that work, if you do that work, that's the range we'll get. I think we would list it at 405, so you've got a chance of perhaps getting that additional price in those early stages. But I think your interest is going to come based on all of those factors, and you can see. Some of the properties that are on the market, that have been on the market for 4 or 5 months, all priced in the 420,000s, all very that are similar to this, haven't sold. So if and I understand that there is not a great time pressure for you to move, but there is a time frame you need to be gone by, and I think that in mind, if you look at the ones that hung around on the market, they're all way above that 400, and they haven't made adjustments. All coincidentally, the one of the ones that made the shift, the last one we mentioned, Cooper Court, that was initially listed at 435, and they were on the market for 8 weeks and then adjusted and ended up selling for the 377. So when you look at all those factors, I think it's important if we list close to where that range will be, your days on market will be a lot less, and that's been shown throughout the information I've given you. In your experience, when you sold your properties before, what methods have you used to sell? Have you sold by auction, for example?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not keen on auction.
No. Okay. Well, auction obviously is a way where where the property can be sold unconditionally. In no building pests, no finance conditions, all sold. I think in this instance, there's no need to go to auction because we have enough comparable data on where your price sits not to be in any doubt. I mean, I think it's fairly obvious that the similar sort of properties that are in this area are all very similar to yours. So in terms of size, 3-bedroom ensuite. And I think we can compare by pricing well. We don't need to go to auction. So the next way is indeed by what are called private treaty, which is effectively it's where the buyer negotiates in private through me with you. So that effectively is they make an offer. No one else is privy to that offer. No other buyers are privy to that offer, and then we can negotiate on those terms. And if all the terms marry up, then we can create a contract and go from there. And that's the method that I recommend, is that we list at a list price of 405, and we do it on a private treaty. Obviously, the other ways are open listed, where basically everybody can list the property, and nobody's responsible for the property. It's not the most favourable way of selling property because you've got no accountability for the agent, and that's obviously what we like to do. We like to make ourselves accountable so that we're answerable to you. And it's also an exclusive. It's an exclusive listing, so it means that we have the listing for 90 days. Effectively, we can conjunct, which means other agents from the area can, if they had a buyer, they can bring that buyer through if they get the permission from us, and we share the commission with them. So it doesn't cost you any more, it just means that we are opening it up to everybody anyway, so you're not losing out on that front. In terms of commission, we charge 3.3% including GST, so that's plus marketing as well, which compares favourably to the area. We're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive, but I think we do offer the best value with the team we've got and the experience that we are offering.
And when do I have to pay that?
Commission's paid on settlement. So if we don't sell it, the property, you don't have to pay anything other than the marketing expenses.
And what about what when you talk about marketing expenses, what do you mean?
So marketing, I'll go through marketing now, if that's okay with you. In the the listing kit that I dropped off the other day, in there, do you mind if I just turn to the, okay, there's information there which was, this is where all our buyers come from at the moment. So that's buyers is by people who've actually purchased the property. So the large percentage are coming from the internet, which we can see quite clearly there. So what we've done is we've weighted our marketing packages to where we know the buyers are going to come from. Okay. Now the marketing campaign, we actually to pay that up front.
So that's not included in your 3.3% commission?
No, it's not. It's basically because we pass on the costs of the suppliers. It's not our costs. We pass them on. The commission is what is our service fee, if you like. This is basically other people's input, and they're being paid directly for that input. So in this, we've got professional copywriting. So we send the proofs off to be written. Professional photography, which again is a must in the way the internet is. Editorial submissions to newspapers, that's complimentary. You can see there 24% of our buyers do come from the newspaper, so it's still a very important role, but those don't cost you anything, those adverts in the paper. We've got the building and pest inspection. Obviously, with the property this time, we'd like you to do a building and pest inspection. It saves any hassle at the end of the day. It means that we don't delay any transactions won't be delayed by any issues that come up, and we know up front if we have to deal with anything going forward. We've got here the internet, realestate.com domain. That's comes up to 2,300. Database, our database marketing, which we charge $200 for that, and our Facebook targeting, which is social media targeting. So basically,
what do you mean database marketing?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to go through that. We got so in our database right now. Before I left the office, I had a look how many buyers are now actively looking in this area in your price range. We've got 25 buyers actively looking who are confirmed. They have been fully qualified buyers. So it means they have got the finance pre-approved. They've either made offers on other properties, or they have been to other property inspections and shown strong interest. So they will be emailed directly. We also have on top of that another 70 buyers who would fit the profile of this property. We haven't qualified them because they haven't made offers on any properties, or been to any similar property, actually visited any properties, but they've inquired on properties that we've had. So they'd all get emails. Plus we do our social media campaign, which is Facebook, which goes out to the profile. So we know At the moment, 52% of our buyers come from the area, so they come from this region. 48% come from out of area, so that's we know they're coming from the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, and Brisbane. So what we do with that is we target those demographics, both locally and Brisbane and Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast. So they're areas that we put all of our targeting for social media into. Works very effectively. As you can see on the list of properties sold, if you go through that, we can show you where the buyers came from. A large percentage did come from as we can see here, social media. 12% came from social media. So it's an effective, very effective method. We've got here the signboard. So what we like to have out the front is a signboard with pictures of the interior of the property, like the kitchen and then the back garden that people can't see from the road. And that helps, obviously, when people are driving around seeing lots of properties on the internet, helps them identify your property. And we know that 4% of our buyers are coming from the signs, where they'll call from a sign on that basis. Now that total comes to $3,821.
And when do I have to pay that?
We invoice you about 2 weeks after the property's been launched. So within 4 weeks usually. Is that okay?
I'll have to do some of my budgeting.
Okay.
Just to see how that all fits.
Okay.
Really.
We can take credit card payments if that does help. So we can do that.
So obviously I've had a few agents over, and some of them say that they'll cover their marketing.
Yeah, sure, and that we do get that a lot. But ultimately, we know that if it's a cost, so it's a direct cost that, and if I've got to spend $3,000 out of our budget, if you like, it doesn't. It's not a cost that we couldn't do that. We just genuinely can't do that. Make those expenses, because if we did that to 10 properties, that's $30,000. You can imagine these companies that do it, they're obviously are not showing any faith in their systems. And you'll find that what happens is, with the competition that we create, you'll find that the buyer usually pays for that marketing commitment effectively, because what happens is we sell for, on average, the average list to sale price ratio. So say somebody lists a property for $100,000, our average list to sale price ratio is 3%. So therefore, it's 97%. So therefore, what you're going to get, you're going to sell for 97,000. Whereas our competition, we know that they're at the moment they're averaging around about the 10% list to sale price ratio. So if you listed your property for 100,000, they're going to sell it for 90,000. So if they're going to sell that for 90,000, effectively you can see we've already sold it for 7,000 more. We've paid for your marketing and more. So that's, if you extrapolate that out to 400,000, let's say, that's a considerable saving in your pocket. And that's evidenced by the sales in there. You can see by what we listed them for and what we sold them for, compared to what obviously the competition are doing. We're not volume listers, so a lot of people who list lots of properties will do the marketing, free marketing, and it doesn't tend to be as good a quality, and they work on the basis that the volume of travel will eventually sell the property. We're more relationship, on a relationship basis, so we don't list as many properties, because so that we can spend more time with the buyers and indeed the sellers when we have further feedback meetings on the property, or we have offers to present, so that we can spend more time on that basis. So that's we kind of deem that based on our evidence, the quality of marketing we're producing, because we're not having to pay for it, is of the highest order, which really is what, to cover all these bases, is really what we want to do. Does that make sense? Okay. Now to list the property for sale, I know you may not have made your decision yet. I'll just go through a listing form with you, so that if you do decide to sell, at least you will understand whether it's for me or anyone else. You'll have been through the form, and you'll be better served to go from there. So the listing form is effectively, this is your information here. This is our information, so the office's information, all laid out there. This is the property that's going to be on the market, which is 3 Foxdale Drive. This is, we would suggest it for sale. This is the time frame of 90 days. It's suggested list for $405,000. And in here there's a price range that we have to discuss with you, that we would market. So we've said our price range on the in here was 377 to 393. We would go from 370 to 400. Now that's merely a back office price range thing. So when we do the internet, for example, we put in the system, nobody sees these figures, but it's, you know, when you search in Melbourne, you usually put a price range in, don't you?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's what we do. We put 370 to 410.
Yeah, but I'm not selling 370.
No, absolutely not, and we wouldn't say. But what we've worked out is here from 377 to 393 is where the buyers will be. So we know buyers tend to spend a little bit more than they might be looking for. So that's why we do cover our bases by in putting the lower end at 370 and then the top end at 410. So we have to let you know that's what we're doing. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, as long as you know I'm not selling for 370.
Okay, well, why don't we, if you're not comfortable with that, why don't we put 380 to 410? How does that sound?
Well, they've got the price there,
yeah,
which is 405. So presumably that's all that they need.
This is, yeah, absolutely. But this here is the price range where we put in the back office, and we have to legally tell you that's the range we are using.
Okay.
And if we're talking to buyers, that if I'm ringing a buyer up from my database and they're from the price range of 370, I can talk to them. If it's not, then I can't talk to them. If they said my upper limit's 370, I can't talk to them.
Okay.
Okay. By encompassing all these people, we'll create competition. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This has been, as I've been through the different methods of selling the property, we're going to go for private treaty exclusive agreement for 90 days. And if at the end of that we don't sell it, you've agreed, we tick the box to agree to go to an open listing. Hopefully that won't be a problem. We'll have got that sold based on our days on market. And then you'll be asked to sign, I'll just go back to that. You will be asked to sign that section of what's gone before. And this is our commission, as I said, 3.3%, including GST. This is the marketing costs, 3,798 plus the title fee. So we have to legally have a title to make sure that we're selling the right person's property. So we have to get that before we actually list the property. So that's a fee of $23, which is included in that marketing budget, but we have to get that figure, $23 paid straight away. But we will pay that, but we'll just invoice you as one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we ask you just to sign, there is a prerequisite warning statement that if there's anything in here you don't understand, you should ask your solicitor to have a look at it. It is a standard Law Society document, and like I said, most people are quite happy with it. But if you do have any concerns, there is that saying that you should have legal advice beforehand. So if you are happy, you could just go ahead and sign. Okay. So if I could just go through a summary of what we've discussed. So you're moving to Melbourne.
Yeah.
You'd like to be there in 5 weeks.
There or thereabouts. It could go to as much as a couple of months.
Okay, you were hoping for 400,000. I've said I thought the price range was 377 to 393, list at 405. We've agreed that the marketing budget would be 3,831. We've agreed that we go private treaty, exclusive agency for 90 days. We've agreed we'd use a combination of the internet the newspaper, the signboard, the database, and social media to market your property.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any questions on that?
How soon does all of that take? I mean, it's going to take me a couple of weeks if I'm going to have a look at the suggestions that you've made to get the property more presentable.
Sure. Well, from when you get the property ready to go, it takes us about 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from getting the photographer here to getting all the write-ups done, getting it all sent off, approved, in the paper, in the internet, ready for our first inspections. Usually around 4 days.
Right. Okay. And will there be open homes? I'm not really keen on open homes.
Look, in this instance, I don't think we need to do open homes. I think we'll have enough people in the early days, the first couple of weeks, to probably just do private inspections. But after that, we may discuss that if we need to. It is a good way of saving your time and maximising buyers. But I do think we'll have a number of buyers who will be interested straight off the bat. Which, that in mind, is in this situation, what we often do is we suggest that you sign the listing form now, and then I can start talking to buyers about the property where I've got coming up, and then I can actually, even whilst you're getting the work done, we might be able to show some people through, and it might minimise your the time on market, because I do have some investors who are very savvy and they will look over what work needs to be done, and as long as that work's done, they could well pay the money. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think I'll wait and get it ready first.
All the work done.
I'd
Okay.
rather have the work done.
Okay, no, that makes sense. That makes absolute sense. It's just we just sold that. The property in there, which was 2 Smith Street, was around the corner. That sold exactly. They hadn't even started the work. We took the buyer through, and then we told them what the owner was going to do, and they bought that at the list price. The owner did the work, and hey, pressed it. But I do take on board that. So what I'm going to do, Amanda, is I'm going to email you a summary of our discussion, the time frame. So if you say 2 weeks time, and then I will give you a marketing calendar of what our planned operations will, what we will be doing in those few weeks, when we'll get the photographer booked for, and all those things. Now that is a movable feast, but it'll give you an indication of what we need to do in terms of time frame and how it works.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks very much for your time, Amanda. It's lovely to meet you, and I really hope we can do business together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.